Greetings, students, and welcome to another fun-filled day here at Horror in the Halls. What's up, kids, and welcome to Horror in the Halls. I'm Bob, aka Mr. Holland.
And I'm Jenny, aka Mrs. Hill.
And we're just two high school teachers talking about the spooky stuff we love. And guys, it's finally time for a Jenny Dreadful.
Dun, dun, dun.
So in this week's lesson, we learned that of all the weapons in the world, love is the most dangerous, as we discuss the New York Times best-selling novel, Pride and Prejudice and Zombies by Jane Austen and Seth Grahame-Smith. Man, it's a good one. I like it.
Yes, it is.
All right, and as you know, Miss Hill is our illustrious English teacher. Let
Yes,
her
I am. Okay.
lead this. Start the show.
Start the show. Okay. Well, I have some cool facts like you always do, with the movies, but I went with the authors this time. I have a Jane Austen. I'm gonna talk about her first. She was born in December 1775 and she died in July of 1817. I love Jane Austen. If you're an English teacher, you can't not love her. Like if you don't, you're lame, but whatever. She was quoted saying, "Let other pens dwell on guilt and misery," which I loved that, so I made sure to quote it. But she's known for her 6 completed novels, Pride and Prejudice, obviously, being number 1. Sense and Sensibility, Mansfield Park, Emma, Persuasion, and Northanger Abbey, which I have not read that one. I probably should. She wrote anonymously and did not become popular into the 20th century, which is normal for that time period. Like they wrote under pseudonyms or like just anonymously because women were not respected or revered as writers or anything of the sort at that time. So
yeah, I was about to ask if it was because of her sex or was it like just kind of the content? So I guess probably at the time that makes sense.
It was her sex. Yeah, most definitely. Her work has been adapted so many times. We have many adaptations of Pride and Prejudice, obviously, as well as Emma, Sense and Sensibility, Mansfield Park. We have an awesome adaptation of Emma called A Clueless. I get really excited about when I see that kind of stuff.
Is that really an adaptation of a Jane Austen story?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. I didn't know that.
It's of Emma. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, because Emma's a matchmaker. So, yeah, it's great.
I wonder what Jane Austen would think of the movie Clueless.
Actually, she probably would have really liked it because Emma is like this really, rich, like well-to-do lady that lives with her dad. And it's just her and her dad. And the guy that comes over is like an ex-stepson. So like that's how they make the connection with the, the love interest in Emma. So it's really good. I don't know. I enjoy it. But I thought it was hilarious. I was like, oh my gosh, it's Emma. So I love Clueless.
That's funny. I had no idea.
Yeah. There have been, there's a lot of things that have been retold. And then you have their vicious retelling of Pride and Prejudice, with a splash of zombies, also known as unmentionables in the book that we're about to review. So, but yeah, that's been adapted. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. Adapted into like miniseries and movies, and so I love me some Pride and Prejudice. It's my favorite. And then you have Seth Grahame-Smith. He is 47 years old, and he's an American author, so which I thought was a cool mashup. He's written Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, as well as Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, which is also another major motion picture. Yeah, I did like them. Yeah, no, I really liked the movie. I haven't read the book, but I did like the movie. Yeah. His combination of history and horror make you feel like it's the real thing. Quoted by Tim Burton, my favorite, which is why he got make an appearance today. He occasionally writes and produces movies, but he is well known and most liked for the Lego Batman movie and It. So if you look at his Instagram, it's full of like pictures of like the scenes of like of It and stuff, like all the the characters and actors. Like a writer? He's a producer on it.
Okay. I was like, did he write that? I didn't know he wrote that. Okay, that's cool.
No, he was a producer on it because I made sure to look at his IMDb to make sure, but then I also looked at his Instagram. So his Instagram is like full of pictures of like the making of It. So it was really cool. Okay. Let's see. Which I thought was really neat because on his bio like page, like he talks about like how he grew up reading Stephen King. So I bet he was like super stoked that he got to be on it.
Oh, I bet.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking
I
now.
would
It
have,
looks like he did actually he co-wrote the Lego Batman movie and Dark
yeah,
Shadows and Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. He co-wrote those.
yeah. Dark Shadows, indeed.
Yeah. Interesting.
So he's also written two other books, which I found very interesting. I've never heard of these books, so I'm really interested to look them up. But one's called Unholy Night, and it's based off the book of Luke from the Holy Bible.
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
the cover of it is very interesting. You need to look at the cover of it. And then The Last American Vampire, which this I thought was really cool. It's based off that picture of the serviceman that's dipping the girl and the lady in Times Square in New York after they declared a surrender of Japan at the end of World War II.
Yeah.
So it's that famous picture of that kiss or whatever. But it's that at the front cover of the book, and it's got like blood dripping
I
from her
know.
neck. It's really interesting.
Like on a
So
side note, I'm a big fan of that cover just for the way they wrote the word vampire. Like from a graphic design standpoint, how the red goes through and makes the
yeah.
line in the A, and some
hmm
of the letters are above it and some are below it. I really like that. Like it's really cool. You'd even
Yeah.
mention his best book ever. His very first book is called The Big Book of Porn, a penetrating look at the world of dirty movies.
What's funny is it's not listed on his page. It only has those. Like
That's
I
on
looked
his
at his author
Wikipedia.
page.
I'm looking at his Wikipedia. I wouldn't mention
That's
those
right.
either.
He doesn't even.
No.
He's not going to mention that.
Hell no, he has 4 books before Pride and Prejudice. It's like The Big Book of Porn, The Spider-Man Handbook, How to Survive a Horror Movie, and then Pardon My President, A Fold and Mail Apologies for 8 years. Those are the books he wrote before Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, which I think is kind of
Like
fun.
he mentioned, like you can tell that he's done other things, but he will say like these are probably going to be your favorites or the most known. Like he makes sure to say that. It's funny how he did his page. Like this page only has those 4 books on it.
That's all I'd put on
So
mine too if it were up to me. Like take all that other shit off my book. Maybe the How to Survive a Horror Movie I'd leave on there just because that one's okay.
yeah,
Let's not mention The Big Book of Porn.
like he knows that they're gonna surface. It's fine, but
Yeah,
he's like I'm not gonna remember those days. Let's start with
that's
Pride and
funny.
Prejudice and Zombie. Oh gosh, I am most interested in reading The Last Vampire. I think that would be really cool because I love vampire stuff
Yeah, because
too.
there's no like, it would be cool because if you think about it, like this one, he's kind of taken known stories, but there's not a whole lot about that particular picture. So basing an
No, because
entire book on a photo might be kind of cool.
it's two strangers in that picture. Like they didn't know each other. That serviceman just freaking kissed her because he was so excited.
Oh,
He's
it's
like,
funny.
I'm gonna celebrate.
I'm reading
Uh,
about it here, and it actually is kind of a continuation of Abraham Lincoln and Vampire Hunter.
oh, is
It's a
it?
sequel to Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Huh. So I'd have to read that one first. Okay.
Yeah, according to this, it looks like it's got Nikola Tesla in it. I need to read this. I love Nikola Tesla. For those who didn't know, he's like the last great mad scientist. I love him.
That's interesting. I'll
Sorry,
have
I'm
to.
over here on a Wikipedia rabbit hole now. I'm like, what is this book about? Okay, because in this book, he took like an already established text, like a
Oh yeah,
wildly
absolutely.
popular established text, and then he kind of just added into it and changed it. And the Abraham Lincoln, there wasn't a whole lot of established text, but he took like a fairly well known period of time.
Yeah, he did a really good job. I can't say he did a good job on the book because I haven't read it, but I loved the
The
movie.
book is good. I think the book is closer to the movie than this movie is to the book for this book. Like, this book they changed a lot. The Abraham Lincoln one is pretty close because you don't have that make it more actiony because it's like all action all the time. And the Civil
Yeah.
War is in it. You know what I mean? So it's like all the time. So it's pretty cool.
Well, and it's not like it's a book that was already together. It was,
Yeah.
he created something new, but he just took history and applied it to the book, so it makes sense. Whereas this one can't really do like you could do that, but it would have to, if he would have to take a lot of liberties, and I don't think he didn't really want to do that as much in this one.
Yeah, I get it. Like it looks like he kind of went a little. I don't know. This one, I gotta say though, as a man, I guess I'll be honest. I've only read Pride and Prejudice one time. It's one of my wife's favorite books. Like without a doubt, this and Lord of the Rings are her favorite books. There's probably 23 copies in my house of each one of these books. When we first started dating, I was like, I should read this book. It's her favorite book, and I read it, and I was like, so extra. but it was a good story, and of course it's very well written. Jane Austen is an amazing writer. You kind of understand the time. You feel the characters. I do think he did a good job of making this more exciting, and he added,
Yeah.
because I was worried when it was first announced, as were a lot of people were, that it would be like, how do you incorporate that into this story? But he did a great job of taking the already emotions in the book, like the stuff with Lizzie's family and the stuff with what's Darcy's aunt's name, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, and like making her come out. You know
Say
what I
that
mean? Like
again.
Lady Catherine de Bourgh. I'm trying to channel Mr. Collins here. Uh,
Oh my
he
gosh.
did a good job, I think, of really just adding a layer to all the animosities and the relationships that are already there, and not
Yeah, he
necessarily
did.
just throwing zombies in to Pride and Prejudice. You know what I mean? Like it makes sense. Like I would not, if I was a person who didn't know who Jane Austen was and he just put his name on the book, I'd be like, oh cool, he made this whole book up by himself, which I thought was kind of cool.
So I'm ready to like actually talk about the book. But I want to give a rundown of how I feel about it first before I get into all the the nitty gritties. But I did like it. I can't say that I loved it, but it's because I love the original.
Yeah.
The way it is. But that doesn't mean I didn't like the book, because I did like it. I think it was a really good retelling with an addition of zombies. I thought there was going to be more zombies in it than there was. I do like that he called them unmentionables. I think that was really a good touch, because that seems like something they would have said.
Yeah, it sounds a
Like,
very like high society
yeah,
British kind of, and you're gonna say it with nasally, and the unmentionables. That's exactly what it
yes.
sounds like.
Yeah, so I liked that touch. I thought it was really good. I did pick this book because I figured, like, I haven't read it before and I love Jane Austen, so I figured, okay, it's a retelling. But he did a really good job at keeping the original text for the most part. Like, he added some liberties in there, but I
Yeah.
thought they were really good touches. I wasn't mad at them. I was just a little surprised, but I'll get to those later. So let's talk about a little bit about the characters. I didn't list everyone. I only listed the ones that I felt were most important, because
Cool.
there's a lot of characters.
The ones that matter.
Yes. So you have Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. Then you have Jane Bennet, Elizabeth Bennet, Mary Bennet, Kitty Bennet, and Lydia Bennet. So it's 5 daughters in a time where having 5 daughters is the worst.
I know, dude. I have 4 now. I couldn't imagine having 5 then. You know what I mean?
So yeah, because the whole purpose then was to have an heir,
Mm,
and there isn't one, because you can't pass down property to a female, because a female can't own property unless she's very well to do, like Lady Catherine. So, but then you have Mr. Bingley, who is the one that moves into Netherfield. That's like a down the road.
yeah.
Miss Bingley, who I completely loathe.
Yeah.
I really wanted something more to happen to her in this, but unfortunately, I was let down. So, Mr. Darcy, Charlotte Lucas, who is Elizabeth's best friend, the Foresters. They're minor, but they needed to be said, like talked about a little bit, because of their major screw up.
Yeah.
You have the Gardners, which is Lizzie, and well, the rest of the Bennets. It's their aunt and uncle, Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
Duh.
That's good. I just said Lady Catherine
You got to say her whole name.
de Bourgh.
Yeah. Like in my brain, sorry to interrupt, but in my brain, because of who plays Mr. Collins in the
Yeah,
movie, I
I get it.
only hear her name as Matt Smith saying it. Lady Catherine. Like there's so much emphasis put on the dibba. Like she's like, you know what I mean? Like it just makes me laugh
Yeah.
every time.
He was a good addition to the movie, because he was so absurd.
He
It
doesn't match though, not to how he's described, but he's
No,
great.
he doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
But he's
but he
great
was
because it's
still,
Matt Smith.
yeah, he played him well though, like
Yes, yes.
regardless, because he's
100%.
ridiculous.
Because he's a character. He's great.
Yeah. So then on to Mr. Collins. I have Mr. Collins listed. He is Elizabeth Bennet's cousin, who is obnoxious.
Yes.
And I so hated him through the original book. So his story's kind of sad in this, but whatever. Mr. Wickham, which everyone should hate,
Yeah, he sucks.
because he is the worst. He's the worst human being ever. But like I said before, I didn't list anyone else, because I felt like these are the most important characters of the story. There
Yeah,
are others, but like they're not worth mentioning because they don't propel the plot that much. They're just there.
kind of like
So
Bingley's other sister and her husband. Those people that are just kind of there.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
not necessary.
yeah.
Yeah, they. I mean,
Or
they're.
the other aunt, Miss Phillips.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, we don't need to list any of those.
She's just there for drama. Let me tell you some stuff I heard in town.
Yeah, because Mrs. Bennett is so extra about
Oh
everything,
my
which I know
god.
how you feel about her. Let's.
I'll let you continue on before I go down a rant of
Yeah.
how much
So,
I hate her.
let me see. Well, so for those of you who do not know, the premise of Pride and Prejudice is about the Bennett family. They were what I would call a working class family today. They don't have a lot of money. They're not necessarily poor.
Yeah, I would say
Um,
like
they
maybe
make a good living.
if you had to give it a creation now, their dad would be like like a master tradesman almost. Like he's that
Yeah.
level where they have money, but they're not like
hmm
high society.
they're not.
Yeah,
They're country folk.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Their dad's like an electrician who makes more money than people realize, but is looked down upon by businessmen.
yes, because and also he's got 5 daughters, dude. He has
I
a lot
know.
of mouths.
That's the
That's a lot
worst,
of
dude.
mouths to feed, and that's a lot of people that he's got to give a dowry to that he doesn't have really the
Mm,
money to give to. Like it's a mess. So having 5 daughters in that time period would have been the worst. Like, 'cause your
yeah.
main goal is to have an heir, and Mrs. Bennett let him down.
Yes, she did.
Lord.
Yes, she did. She let the world down because she's the
for
worst.
for more reasons than one. And I wish I had gone and read Pride and Prejudice first before I ventured back into this one because it's been a while since I've read it. But I felt like there was more disdain for her in this one and in the book. Like it was there, but I don't feel like it was that prominent.
Well, I think because in the original book, you don't have the added layer of them being warriors on top of it.
Yeah.
So she's also fighting this nature that their father, because in this book, their father has essentially raised them as men.
Yeah,
Like
because
they're
he
all
has to
trained in
raise
deadly
them as
arts.
warriors.
Yeah, because you have that weird, like you notice, like whenever Lizzie and Jane first meet Bingley's sisters, how they're talking about how like they have no combat abilities whatsoever, but they have their like feminine wiles or whatever. Well, in the original story, you don't have that layer. So even though there's the scene where, at the party where she's drunk and being obnoxious, she's really just portrayed as a mother who is really concerned about the marriages of her daughters. And really rightly so, like you just stated, with no heirs and Mr. Collins getting the entailed property, she doesn't want them all to be
Yeah, because
homeless.
he's the closest to
Yeah.
an heir that Mr. Bennett has.
Yeah, and he's like a distant cousin to Mr. Bennett at that. They're not even that close related, but he's like the
No.
closest male heir, which I get, and so I mean, you kind of understand, but I think this added layer makes her that much more annoying.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, because at one point it actually talks about how Mr. Bennett feels about her, and I'm just like,
Yeah,
oh my gosh, he hates her so.
I know. Well, just the way he talks to her, and I think you can get that context a little bit in the original book because he's not
Yes,
that
you
nice to
can.
her.
No.
Because she sucks. And poor, you got to think about it too. He probably low key hates her really because she did not give him an heir.
Well, that and she is not. He states in the book that he let her beauty kind of dictate whether or not he was going to marry her or not, and
Yeah,
it backfired. So it's his fault, and
yeah,
he completely owns it. And he's like, I'm kind of stuck here now. And he said, I'm just hoping to raise my girls to not be like their stupid mom.
yeah, yeah.
That's what it basically said.
He married her because he thought she was hot. That's basically
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
She has
And
no redeeming qualities at all.
no, she doesn't.
And I think
And
they're
oh my
worse in
gosh,
this
I
book.
can't.
It's worse in this
Yeah.
book. Because I was, as I said, this is one of my wife's favorite books. So the whole time I was asking her about comparisons just because I didn't want to read Pride and Prejudice again. So I was like, hey, what about this character? What about this character? But I was like, does she have redeeming qualities in the book? And like I said, you give her leave because her only concern is marrying her daughters, as I'm sure her father's only concern was marrying her. Like, hey,
Well,
you're
yeah, it
pretty,
had to be.
so congratulations. Because you hear her talk, they never mention her having brothers. She has 2 sisters, but she
hmm
never talks about a brother ever.
No, she doesn't.
So I was like, that's interesting. But so yeah, so I'm sure that she was like a product of what she already knew. Her only concern in life was, especially like in this book, Lizzie and Jane, and to a lesser extent the other 3, they have something to fall back on. Like Lizzie mentions it often that she's the bride of death and that she'll
Yeah.
be content just killing the unmentionables for the king. She's gold. I just want to slay zombies and drink their blood because she's a crazy person, like a warrior princess over here, little
Yeah,
baby
he did.
Xena.
The two that that make the most sense, like they're the most reasonable, is always been Jane and Elizabeth. Like
Yeah,
they knew like what their fate was basically, and that there was a possibility that they would never marry, and if they did marry, they would marry okay, but not like really well off.
well, yeah, because
And
even in the
in this
original
one,
novel at the time, Jane is old. 23 is a little
yeah.
old for that time period because she's 23
Oh,
in
it
this novel.
is.
That's old.
It is. Well, I mean, yeah, 20. It's even probably before that. You're an old spinster at that point, like because
Like
you're supposed to
Lucas,
get married early.
like
Oh,
Charlotte.
gosh, poor Charlotte. I feel so sorry for Charlotte in both books.
I know.
So, and I'll get to why I feel really sorry for Charlotte in this one, but her fate was kind of sad.
Yeah.
But I think I had a very like you said, I have more disdain for Mrs. Bennett more than anything else, and Lydia. I'm like, why are y'all always just the worst?
I know.
Um,
I
Mary's
know.
kind of there. Kitty's annoying as hell. And then you have Mr. Bennett, who I always loved Mr. Bennett. I thought I adored Mr. Bennett in both. I liked that he was very honest with everybody about everything. And he was like, look, I have 5 daughters. I'm trying my best.
Yeah,
I
he's
have an
very
annoying
blunt.
wife. Yes, he is.
He's like, just leave me alone in my library to read books. Don't speak to me. Like, I hate you all.
Yeah, he's like, y'all are all the worst. I love you, but you're the worst. So I like that Seth took the relationship between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy and kept it true to form, but added some almost more intimacy in it, which I was really shocked about because Jane Austen was very sparing in the writing
Yeah.
with the intimacy because you have to be kind of reserved at that time period.
Yeah.
So when Seth took his little spin on it, he added more intimacy to it, which made it more engaging. So that was cool. I really enjoyed that.
Well, yeah.
Um,
He did a good job of adding that extra piece, I think, as to
yes, and
why they liked each other.
yeah, and I'm yeah, because at the end, man, the end is so well done that I was fully engaged. Like the very beginning, I was really kind of bummed because I'm like, where are the zombies? Like
Yeah.
I wanted more, but at the end, it picked up and the story was really just he knocked it out of the park and he made it really, he took like I say, he took some liberties, and I'm gonna go ahead and start talking about those. But so like the Lady Catherine and Mr. Collins. So Mr. Collins is supposed to be the heir to Mr. Bennett's estate, and would take pretty much when Mr. Bennett passes, the estate would pass to Mr. Collins, and
Yeah.
could potentially put all 5 daughters and mom out on the street if he wanted to. Granted, knowing Mr. Collins, I know that would have not have happened. I feel like he would have figured something out. He wasn't a completely heinous person. He was just obnoxious.
No,
So
plus, I can't see him, especially in this book, the way they played him with Lady Catherine. There's no way
mhm.
he was leaving her grounds.
No, absolutely
No
not.
way. He'd have sold that
He
farm before he dipped.
yeah. And there's a possibility that he would have just let them stay there.
Yeah.
And like I never really felt like Mr. Collins was going to put them out. Like even in the original, I didn't.
Yeah.
So Mr. Collins comes to stay and kind of get his eye on a sister. It's like what cousin do I want?
Yeah.
And originally he wants Jane because Jane's the prettiest of the bunch. But
Mhm.
then he's kind of stuck with Elizabeth, which he does not. He is not really appreciative of
No,
because he
let's be
thinks
heinous.
it's beneath him.
She's kind of heinous a little bit.
Oh, Miss Elizabeth.
Yeah, she's kind of a jerk.
Oh yeah, she's a jerk. That's
Yeah.
that's why her and Mr. Darcy work so well. They're both jerks.
Yeah, she's kind of a jerk all the time.
I love Elizabeth because I'm a jerk, so I get it.
Yeah.
So
Well,
there's that.
will be nice. She's very strong-willed
Yes, independent.
and very independent, and at the
If that makes
time,
us
it would
jerks, whatever.
not be that would not be looked upon favorably.
It wasn't
Yeah.
because most of them did not like her.
Yeah.
He did because he he needed somebody to
Because
like put
no
him,
one liked him.
and she didn't either.
I know. No one liked him. He's sad. My patroness, told me I should marry.
Oh goodness. Okay. So as the story progresses, you have we all kind of figure out that like, okay, Lizzie's gonna tell him no. Okay, Mr. Collins, you can come at her all you want. She's gonna say a no. And what I love is when Mrs. Bennett is so tore up about her refusing Mr. Collins.
Oh,
And
no.
she's yelling at Elizabeth and she's yelling at Mr. Bennett and she's like, you tell her that I will never see her again. Blah blah blah. Like just losing her mind. And Elizabeth's like, like breaking down. She's like, I cannot. I'd rather be alone for the rest of my life. I can't marry for, no, there's no love or no,
Yeah.
attentiveness or whatever. And her dad was like, okay, well, now you have to make a choice. Your mother will, one of your parents will never speak to you again.
I
He goes,
know.
and I will never speak to you again if you do.
Single
And I
best
was
part of
like,
the game. Like
yeah,
that makes Mr. Bennett the best.
yeah,
When he is like, that's to me, that even in the original, that's my favorite part, where he's like, you have to make an important choice. If you say no, your mother will never speak to you again. But if you say
yeah.
yes, I will never speak to you again. And you can tell Lizzie does not like her mom. Like, she respects her mom because
No.
it's her mom,
Hmm.
but that was a choice that was never going to be made. As soon as her dad
No.
said that, all right, cool, dad, bye, mom, deuces. Like, that's my dad, because she, like, you can tell she's the son he wanted,
Yeah.
and she's
He's her favorite.
headstrong. Yeah,
She is his favorite.
even more
And
so in
he's,
this book because of her like prowess with like the
hmm
deadly arts.
she's the smarter one
Yes.
of the group and the most honestly the most reasonable. Like she's like him. She's really honest like he is. She's blunt.
Yeah.
She doesn't care what she freaking says. He doesn't
No.
either. So
Well, she's also has
she
a
is,
good head on her shoulders, where Jane's kind of aloof. She's like,
yeah.
nah, nah,
She's
can't do it.
very naive. Jane is
Yeah.
very naive and she thinks that she always finds the good in people,
Yeah.
whereas Lizzie's gonna find the worst in you first.
Yeah. She's a realist.
Yes, she is. So I loved that scene. I loved it even more in this one. It was great.
Yeah.
And then he gets his eye set on Mr. Collins gets his eye set on Charlotte and goes to marry her. So this is Charlotte is Elizabeth's best. Oh my gosh, Miss Elizabeth's best friend. But what is sad about this is she confides in Elizabeth in this one that she has been bitten or cursed with the plague. And so she's like, I just want some few happy months to live the rest of my life as a happy married woman. And I'm marrying someone of the church. And she kind of alludes to the fact that because they always say like they're going to send you to Satan because they're like unmentionables.
Yeah.
But I feel like she was like, if I marry someone of the church, then maybe I'll have, the opportunity to go to heaven instead of, hell. But that's
Yeah.
kind of how I took that.
Not join Satan's army, as they say it all the time.
Yeah. So, I thought that was a really sad demise for Charlotte
It
because I
was.
mean, I really liked Charlotte. There was parts about Charlotte in the original that I didn't appreciate because I feel like she kind of hung on Lady Catherine a lot too after she moved in with her husband. But and she kind of did the same in this one, but at the same time it is Elizabeth's best friend. So she's kind of
Yeah.
losing a best friend, which is sad. And then oh my gosh, Mr. Collins. I was like, shut up. So like at the end, like I'm just gonna go through like each one of them, but like Mr. Collins freaking kills himself.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that. He's like, I had to kill my wife because she was plagued with this sickness, and I told Lady Catherine that I would do it because I'm her husband and I love her, basically. And then he was like, and Mr. Bennett, you don't have to worry about me taking over your property once you're gone because I'm going to be hanging from Charlotte's favorite tree. I'm
I
like,
know.
what the
Yeah.
hell? Are you kidding?
I did think that was like it was kind of poetic, because it kind of shows like,
Yeah.
because in this one, like, Lizzie's mortified. She doesn't want anything to do with him. He wants her,
Hmm.
to hang up her swords and to be a wife, and that's not really her. And Charlotte, not only did she benefit herself, because again, she was 27 at the time, which is
Yeah.
beyond unheard of. You're essentially, like you said, a spinster. You might as well just wrap it
Hmm.
up. You're gonna live in your parents' house and take over when your mom dies. So it was kind of you're probably not getting married. But not only did she help herself, but she also, I'm sure Lizzie would have told her, and they kind of touch on it, that how much the match was not in favor of her for her. I mean, he would
Yeah.
not leave her alone. So she kind of, and he comments on it in the story, how thankful Lizzie is for her taking his attentions away from her and speaking to Mr. Collins. So she kind of helped her best friend out while also helping herself, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of cool. And I think Mr. Collins just really, I think when he first gets there, he just wants a wife because he was told to get a wife. And I think
Yeah.
within conversation, and you don't get it a lot, it's kind of the context, he actually does come to love Charlotte, because for him, he's a savior and a husband, right? Like you just touched on, he's a man of the cloth. She's hoping that will redeem her in God's eyes. But I think
Yeah.
he does come to love her, and it is kind of cool. Like, I love that part where he's like, "You don't have to worry, because by the time you read this letter, I'll be hanging from my beloved's favorite tree." And he even mentions Lady Catherine's garden that she generously gave to us, because he's still like enamored with
Oh
her.
gosh, she's so ridiculous about her.
And which is even
Yeah.
crazier, because, as I want to say, religion of the time, would that Would they have been Catholic?
I don't know.
I mean, they got
That's
to
a
be
good
married, so
question.
I'm not sure. If they're Catholic and you hung yourself, you don't go to heaven.
I don't think they were Catholic.
Maybe Protestant or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds more. Yeah, I think that's what it was. I don't think it was Catholic.
But it was interesting to show that he really did
Hmm.
come to love her over the months that she was there, which I think was still crazy. This book doesn't take place over that long of a time. So it wasn't like they were married for like 100 years. It was like less than a year. And then he hung
Yeah,
himself. It was an interesting turn of events for the character.
yeah, because I was sad for Charlotte, and I thought that end with for him was drastic, but I thought it made sense.
Yeah.
So I wasn't mad at it.
Mm.
I thought it was fitting. So I'm gonna move on to Mr. Wickham because I thought that.
Can I add one more thing about Miss Lucas before you move on? Because it's
Oh,
hilarious.
sure.
Because you read the book, I listened to it on Audible. And the
Okay.
lady who reads the book on Audible is a fucking champ. Because when Charlotte has been infected and talking, she
Oh
reads
my
like this.
gosh.
She's like, Lady Catherine. Like and it gets worse every time you talk to her. So as she's like devolving and this sickness is progressing, it's like she talks about how, like, you know, her goo fell in her mouth or something popped. She's like,
Oh, I hate that
I
part.
know.
Ugh, that
She's
was
like,
so gross.
Lizzie, why was and then it was like the way she did it was so like cool. The lady who read this book is a chant. Not only does she have a dope British accent, so it sounds like good, she changes her tone for every character. So Lady Catherine was super stick up her butt, like, ho ho, you're not good enough. And then the Charlotte voice was just great because it was sounded like a zombie. She basically was like, it was starting like syllables were drug out. It was really cool.
Yeah, it was funny because Elizabeth was like, "Why does it? If Lady Catherine is so awesome and kills all these zombies, how does she not know there's a
Yeah.
zombie right under her nose?" But when in reality, Lady Catherine did know. But I'm not gonna talk about that just yet because I want to talk about a fight scene from the end and what heightened it to
Yeah.
such great lengths.
We probably got to talk
Uh,
about the differences and how they look down on her for her Chinese training too.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'll
That's
get
my
all of
favorite
that.
part.
That's what I'm saying. There's so much to talk about in this. Like, there's no way I can talk about all of it within the time frame.
No, it's
So
a long time.
I have to be choosy. So, Mr. Wickham is my next. I loved his ending. I
Yes.
thought that it was so deserved. Him and Lydia both. So,
Mm-hmm.
for those of you who don't know, Mr. Wickham he is the worst type of human. So he tells lots of lies, tall tales.
Mm-hmm.
He makes you think that he's this great person that was slighted by Mr. Darcy and his family, and and puts Darcy in a negative light with Elizabeth for the longest time because that's the one thing Elizabeth does that you're like, really, Elizabeth, you're only going to listen to him because you would think, being so level-headed that she is, that she would want to know both sides, but she's very closed off to Mr. Darcy because of his arrogance and his
Yeah.
pride.
So he's kind of a dick when you first meet him.
Yeah.
He's
So,
very
and really
arrogant.
what it boils down to is he is kind of shy. So, how many people have you met that have been really shy that seem like they're just complete jerks?
Which I think is a really interesting like insight because in the original one, when she gets mad at Darcy for thinking her sister was disinterested, she's like, she's very shy. You know what I mean? Like she's
Yeah.
mad. So like it was an interesting turn how they swapped that around to how he's actually
Mhm.
kind of shy. But originally it was like Darcy was like, your sister didn't like him. She's very shy and scared. You know what I mean? And Lizzie's all mad at
Yeah.
him. I thought that was an interesting like correlation.
Mhm. So, Mr. Wickham, um what it boils down to is he wants money.
Yeah, he's
That
a
is
piece
his
of shit.
crime.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an awful person. He just wants he wants the money that he thinks he's owed.
You know, I think that he is probably the basis for that trope in all those like movies where there's that like seedy dude who's there just to marry for money. Because this was born this
Uh-huh.
1800s, so I would assume Mr. Wickham is probably the basis for a lot of those characters and films that we grew up watching.
Probably. Yeah, because there's always gonna be that one person that's just like you think is great, but then you start to realize, oh, he is the
Yeah, yeah, he's a
worst.
womanizer. He's a
Yeah.
gambler. He's got crazy thousands of pounds of debt. Yeah, he's still
Yeah. So he like swindles all his money away, and he moves in on Mr. Darcy's little sister, who's 15. And Mr. Darcy's like, nah, dude. And what he also mentions to Elizabeth is that he's like, okay, well, not only did he move in on my sister, he, I think he said he broke the legs of his,
What?
one of
Yeah.
his,
He
his
savagely
servants or
beat,
something.
yeah, because he saddled his horse wrong or something stupid.
Or no, 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 it wasn't that. It was that he talked about it.
Yeah.
He was going to. And Mr. Darcy like, the hell you are, and rendered him lame for a little bit because he's like, no, you're not going to do that. But he like spun the tale to make it look like Mr. Darcy was being this horrible person,
Yeah.
when in
Attack him and
reality
stuff.
it was like it was deserved.
Yeah.
Because
You earned that beating, fam.
yeah, so like that's the part that I actually really appreciate in the book too is it's like an eye for an eye because of their training.
Yeah.
So they make it to where like they are allowed to duel and they're allowed to do these things because you've slighted them. Like you've done wrong towards me, so I get to do this to you. Um, so Mr. Wickham runs off with Lydia, who is the worst Bennett sister of all time.
Oh, by far, dude. By far the worst. Like, by
Tell
far.
me how you really feel about her. I don't. I've never liked Lydia. I thought Lydia was the worst.
I'm going to go ahead and say, as an eldest child, if I had a sibling that acted like Lydia, I'd have whooped her ass. Like, there'd have been no,
Yeah.
oh, honor dictates. Honor dictates I beat the shit out of you because you're horrid. Like, I wouldn't have killed her because that's my sister. Like, she's horrible from in the beginning. She's annoyingly horrible, right? So you don't really notice
Yes.
how terrible she is when you're like, oh my God, this character is so stupid. But she's also annoying in the original book. But when she
Yes,
comes
she is.
back after putting her family through, like, so I guess what you hadn't got to, you want to go about the whole marriage thing? Because were you going to talk about that?
Yeah, I was gonna talk about it. So okay, so before we get to the part where the elopement occurs,
God, the best part.
I know
Best
I love it so much, but
It's so well deserved.
it was so well deserved. But there is a scene where Lydia and Kitty are waiting for Jane, and oh my gosh, I can't even say it without laughing.
Oh, my God, you're talking about
Jane,
the one where she talks
Elizabeth,
about treating them to meat and then makes them pay for it? Oh,
yeah.
fuck. I
So
whooped her ass.
they they had this huge spread already sitting out on the table. They're like, yeah, but we already spent all our money, so you all are gonna have to cover it. And they're like, are
Yes.
you kidding? So they ate this great lunch, and then they get in the carriage to go home, and Lydia won't shut up about all the officers in Meriton and like how like, oh my gosh, I got this new bonnet and this new bonnet, I'm gonna put a new material on it. Like she sounds like Mrs. Bennett.
Yes, she is Mrs.
Yes,
Bennett
she
as
is.
a younger person.
Yes.
They're the same person.
And Lydia, in her brain, has unsheathed her katana and beheaded her sister.
Lizzie has, yeah,
Yeah,
I know. The first time I read this, I went, "Holy shit,
yeah, I thought that
that was a
too.
bit extreme." Then she was like, and then I realized, like, ah, dang.
I was like, oh man, she killed her. That's great. And then I was like, oh, she didn't. But in her head, she did. And I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
I feel that. I feel that so much. There's times where I really have punched people in the face a couple times, and I realize I haven't. You know.
Oh yeah, dude. Like, you're lucky. You're lucky. I don't want to go to jail.
Exactly.
No, I'm
So
with it, man. I'm with it because
I,
that is like, she's so annoying.
yeah,
Oh, I hate her so much.
she is the worst. I think they made her 10 times worse, or he made her 10 times worse in this one. And I was like, you know
She
what?
just rambles and is so arrogant and like, I'm telling you, man. Like, there'd have been some training motions where I hurt her bad. Like, if it was reversed and like I'm training my little brother or something and he acted like that, there'll be a couple training situations where he gonna take some time to heal. Like, you were the most annoying person ever.
I
Shut
know,
up.
right?
Like, why are you like this the way you are? You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
she's just so ridiculous.
Yes.
And like, even in the book, listening to it is the worst because it's actually like listening to a person talk to you like that. You're not reading it in your head. It's like, shut the fuck up.
I know you
Like, I was
text me at one
so
point was
mad.
like, I did not remember how much I hated Mrs. Bennett and
Yeah,
the sisters. And I was
they're
like,
so bad,
they're the
dude.
worst.
And like the other ones, I mean, Kitty just follows her around. You know, Kitty's like I guess they're probably really close in age.
Yeah, they
It
are.
seems like
It's like they're a
because the
year
other ones
apart.
there's a couple years and there's a decent sized gap between Lizzie and Lydia, who are the two. Lydia came after Lizzie, but Lydia in the book starts, Lizzie is 21 and Lydia's 15. So that's a
Yeah.
big enough difference to be like, get the fuck.
Yeah, you are the
Like, what?
worst. Well,
But
teenagers are the
Kitty and
worst.
Lydia are a year apart. So they're really close.
Mhm.
So that's why they're so much together. Whereas Jane and the other ones are 2 years apart. They're probably a lot closer. But I would be like, hey, little sister, if you don't stop talking. Because she talks about administering the 7 cuts of shame or their master beating them with a bamboo pole. Why are you not beating your little sister with a
I'm
bamboo pole every
saying she
time
would
she
be
acts a
beaten
fool?
a billion times in this whole situation. I'm
I
like,
know, because like
shut up. You're the
even in the original book, like knowing enough of the time period and like well, knowing most of it's from like movies and books and stuff, but how society looked down on that behavior,
Yes.
how she was, because technically they shouldn't even have been out of the house
No.
until
It should have.
Jane was married.
Yeah, Jane should have been the only one, but they were all out.
Not even Lizzie, who's right there. They're
Mhm.
all out. I think like Kitty's like what, like 14, running around town, flirting with a grown adult men. It's weird.
Yeah, it
Number
is.
one. Number two, I think if Lizzie was the eldest, it'd have been a whole different family dynamic.
Mhm.
So I think Lizzie let Jane kind of mold them as the elder sister, but she's too nice.
Yes, but
She's too sweet.
she is the sweet one. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
I'd have
you like
bamboo
Jane,
kicked
but you
her
also
ass.
get frustrated with Jane 'cause you're like,
Yeah.
not everyone is great and nice, Jane. Stop seeing the
No.
good in everybody. Not
Your
everybody's
sister's the
good.
devil.
So Wickham talks Lydia into an elopement, but kind of doesn't want to marry her. And he's very
No, he wants
clear.
Lizzie.
No, yeah, he does want Lizzie, but he already knows that ship has sailed at this
Yeah, it's
point
gone.
because she finally figures out the truth about him because she finally listens to Mr. Darcy, which I was super pumped about in both books.
Well,
But
sorta. She listens to Colonel Fitzwilliam
no, she listens
and
to him for
other
the
people.
letter too. The letter is what kind
Yeah,
of set it apart. Like collectively, it just took her a long time to be reasonable.
like half the book,
I know, I know,
more
because
than
they
half
were
the
both
book.
very stubborn.
Yeah, they were.
So that's why I said they deserve each other because they were
Mhm.
both incredibly stubborn and very prideful, both of them.
100%.
So that's why the book's called Pride and Prejudice.
It's true.
But so when you're so what I thoroughly enjoyed was that Darcy gets a head on everything, and he's like, I'm gonna find him and I'm gonna fix this because this is my fault because I should have
Yeah.
outed him when I knew he was such a heinous person.
Well, yeah,
And
because his pride, like,
yeah,
did that.
and he didn't want his sister's name soiled, and I get that part too. He was
Yeah.
protecting his 15-year-old sister. But so he meets up and he's like, "Hey, you're gonna marry her, and I'm gonna give you some money to stay quiet and go live your life somewhere. But you have to marry Lydia because you've done messed up." And he's like, "Oh, you're gonna give me money? I'll do it." But then in this book, he was like, "Okay, so I have slighted you, so I'm gonna let you beat me up." So
Yeah. Well, it kind of alludes to it. I was wondering that because,
yeah.
in this time period, Lydia runs off with with Wickham because,
Mhm.
you got to talk about that's where the Foresters come in. Like, they allow her
Yeah.
to go on a trip with this colonel, I guess. I think it was Colonel Forrester. Is he a colonel?
Yeah,
Or is
he
it
was in charge of the
the
I don't
militia,
yeah,
essentially,
the
right? He's a
militia,
militia.
yeah. Mhm.
So they go and she's away from her family, which is legitimately unheard of for the time. There's
Yes,
no
he
way you
shouldn't have
could have gone.
been.
And then she runs off with Wickham, who of course we already established is like conniving con man. He's just trying to get one over. And I think for him, he was probably trying to hurt Lizzie as a whole and Darcy, but that's a whole nother subtext, I guess. But which is funny because they're so worried about her honor being soiled and their name and oh my god, her
Well,
innocence, but
because
she's already kind of a flirt and a turd. But you didn't care earlier when she was hitting on every single dude in the village. But now that she's run off with a dude,
that was Mr. Bennett's fault because he could have
end
said,
of the
"No,
world.
you're not going." And
Yeah,
this could
yeah,
have
he
and
could
he
have laid
says
the
that. He
hammer
said,
down.
"This is all my fault because I should have listened to you." Well, he's talking to Elizabeth. He's like, "I should listen to you and not sent her because she's a clown and
Yeah,
she's going to mess this up for everybody because
well, he lets her
typically."
go because she's annoying.
Yes. He's like, "I just want her out of my hair because 'cause I'm over her."
Yeah.
I'm like,
Can you
he's
imagine
got
how
2
annoying
of them.
she'd be if I say no?
He's like,
No,
If I can get rid of one of y'all, I'm gonna get rid of one of y'all because y'all are all on my
yeah.
nerves." But
Well, I was talking about more like more style. They're so concerned about like essentially what comes down to them having sex out of marriage, right? Her being like raped or whatever. But they never cared about how flirtatious and how like sexually aggressive she is towards all the officers at 15 in town.
yeah,
But the moment she runs off, they're all freaking out like their whole family's ruined. Because like that's why it's significant because their whole entire family
Yes.
ruined because of the middle sister. I think that was part of why Darcy does what he does. It was his pride, but he also did not want
She's not the middle
Lizzie's
sister. She's
whole
the youngest
family.
sister.
No, Lydia is the middle sister, isn't she? I
No,
thought she
she's
was
the
the middle one.
youngest. She is the youngest.
I thought Kitty's younger than her.
Mm-mm.
I thought. Really? Oh,
I don't think so.
that's weird. Yeah, I thought that
She
she
said
was
they always say the youngest is out. The youngest is married.
the youngest. Okay.
Hmm.
Huh. Well, maybe I thought wrong then. I
It's
thought
because they're
my
so
whole
close in age. That's probably why.
I really thought she was
Because I think
younger than
it's
that. Yeah, the
Lydia,
youngest and a sister.
then
Okay.
Kitty, then Mary, then Lizzie, and then
Then why was
Jane.
Kitty so close to freaking Lydia? Okay. Yeah, I had that way wrong in my head then. So never mind. That is still a big gap.
It's because
But like
Kitty is like she is very impressionable,
stupid.
and I feel like Kitty's a lot like Jane in a way, but also just a little. She's like between Jane and Lydia because she sees the good in people, and she's
So
also really
Mary's
immature.
the middle sister.
Yes,
Okay.
Mary is the middle and the most ridiculous. Like, just doesn't want it to do with anything. She's just like, I just want to be
No.
left alone.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the only person that really gets annoyed with the behavior of their family is Elizabeth because she's like, you all are embarrassment. And that the time at the ball, it kind of like comes to fruition. She's like, she said, I'm looking at my mother and she's like laying out, she's drunk and she's talking really loud about her marrying Jane marrying Mr. Bingley when there was nothing between the two yet to solidify that, so that was embarrassing.
Yeah.
And then you have Lydia who's out and she's being ridiculous, and then there's Mary and she's playing the pianoforte, but she's also kind of annoying with it. So she's like, everyone is getting on my nerves. Like,
Because she's bad.
yeah, because she's bad at it. Like, so I think like for the time, it was bad enough that they were all out, but it was even
Yeah.
worse that the youngest would get married first or elope because that would
Yeah.
tarnish the Bennett name. So Mr. Darcy takes it upon himself to be like, I'm gonna fix this because this is my freaking fault. And it was partially, but he renders Wickham completely lame and
Wow, just the
freaking.
best ending ever.
I know, and I'm like, he can't. He has no use of his arms or his legs. I'm like, that's freaking.
Well, he also broke his jaw. If you read some of it, he talks about how he
Yeah.
talks weird because his jaw's healing.
And then Lydia now is married to a man that is completely useless and soils himself quite often. So she gets to clean up messes. And I think that is the best thing. But she's
And
so
she's so
naive at this point
yes.
that she doesn't realize how bad her life is going to suck.
No, well, she comes in all excited. I can't believe I'm married. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll kill more zombies this year than anyone in the regiment. Like he can't walk or move his arms. Like
Yeah, now
what?
he's going to be, what did, it, it's like a man of the cloth, like a priest or
Yeah,
whatever. And I'm like,
a monk or something.
that's the only thing he can do because he is stupid.
Yeah. So I'm not entirely sure if Darcy gave him a choice because when the audiobook she says like, and to keep you or as penance for all the bastards and the debt and to keep you from falling back to your previous tendencies, I'm gonna beat you lame. Like, and
maybe
he's like,
maybe I'm thinking of when Wickham turns around and talks to Elizabeth in the dojo. Maybe that's what I was thinking of. He was saying,
yeah,
I told him he could do it. But instead it was
yeah, 'cause he's
probably Darcy
lying
was like,
still.
nah, dude, I'm gonna beat you up and you're gonna like it.
Yeah, as penance for what you've done. Because they talk about how he's left like a lot of bastards in the
Yes,
countryside,
he
like a
has.
lot of
Because
children.
they alluded to a barmaid.
Yeah, and it probably cost Darcy a lot of money to fix all of his issues.
Yeah. So to
But
keep
it's
him
way
honest.
better. I wish they'd have left this in the movie because I think that is like the best ending for him
Yes, it was.
ever.
That's why I was a little upset about that. I was like, dang it. I wish that's the way it would have ended because that would have been so good to see on screen.
But I think like it was just they had to have the action for the film. But
Yes.
as someone who's read the original story, nothing really happens to him in the original story.
I mean, it would have
Really.
been a lot of action to see him get rendered lame. Just saying.
Yeah, just
Just beat him.
savagely beat.
Beat him
Hey,
up.
bro, I'm
So
about to beat you about your legs and ankles until you can never walk again.
So those are the big takeaways that were different that I thought were good additions because I thoroughly hated Mr. Wickham and Lydia. They were the worst.
Oh, dude.
And I thought
Them,
that was
well,
fitting
their
it.
mom, the worst. Someone should have rendered their mom unable to speak. Like their life would have been so much better. You know what I'm saying? If she was just like
Could you
little
imagine
geisha
once
woman
they were
walking
all
around.
married and off that Mr. Bennett getting stuck with her just
He's gonna kill
rambling?
her, dude. She's gonna die. she's gonna become a zombie. I bet. As soon as they're all gone, they're gonna go out together, and he's gonna let unmentionable bite her ass. I'm like, dang, I had to kill your mom
Yeah.
because she became an unmentionable. See that this book, they have the perfect out. Lydia would have been gotten pushed down into a group of zombies. Let her get eaten. Oh dang, Dad, sorry. I tried to save her. She was so headstrong. She ran right ahead of me.
And
Dang.
Mr. Bennett probably wouldn't have cared.
No, she sucked. You know what I mean? Like, and that's one thing about this book that I also enjoyed. Like, yes, the first one is like pure romance. It's like this
Mhm.
whole like, oh, look at this tale of this woman meeting this love of her life. I love the combat aspect of this.
Yes,
And
there's 2 scenes I really love.
it added another layer of difference. So everyone with money's like, oh, did you go to Kyoto and study with the ninjas and the
Yeah.
samurai? Because everybody who likes action movies also likes ninjas. Come on, zombies and ninjas, you can't go wrong. They're like, oh, you went to Japan with the Shaolin. Oh, and their trickery. They basically treat it like it's inferior.
It is inferior. But
Well, apparently
really,
not, because
yeah, I know.
Elizabeth whooped her ass later. So
So I talked about scenes I loved, and the 2 scenes that I loved a whole lot were with fighting scenes. Was the scene in Mr. Collins' house between Darcy and Elizabeth, because
yeah,
that scene I think needed more heat, and I think that provided it for me. And I was like, that is hilarious. Like she's freaking like swinging on him. She's like, I hate you. You're the
yeah,
worst. I can't believe you would propose to me when you know I don't like you. And then you tell me that you like me,
against your better
against your
judgment.
better
Yeah,
judgment because I'm
I know.
inferior to you. Like, what the hell are you talking about?
That was the
I'm not
worst
good enough for
proposal
you.
ever.
I know. So
Look,
I was,
dirty poor person. I
yeah.
love you. Sorry.
Yeah, and so he's like telling her exactly how he feels about her too, and like they're like smacking each other with like the poker from the fireplace and like
Yeah,
breaking stuff. The mantelpiece gets broken. Like it was really heated. I loved that, and I like how he walked away and he was like, you know what, I'm gonna walk away now. I'm just gonna tell you, I just wish you all the health and happiness, and then he leaves, and I'm like, I loved it because there was so much emotion in that scene.
yeah,
As it was, and I think it was felt even more with the fighting, because I feel like in the original they really wanted to punch each other. Like it was like
yeah.
I really wanted to just club you right
Well,
in the face.
it added that physicality that
Yeah.
I think this, like you said, the scene needed.
Mhm.
And it also gave, I think that's why I love the combat in this, because it gives them an additional layer and outlet for the aggressions
Mhm.
and for that pent up anger. And it's cool that, like, time frame wise, for her to strike him would have been very negatively looked upon,
Oh yeah,
right?
absolutely.
But because of the unmentionable outbreak and how all five of her sisters are sworn to protect where they're from by the king, like, because she has a station, like he comments on that, but
Yes.
it's not a big
No.
comment on it, is that she has a station. She's like, my job is to protect this area
Yeah.
from the unmentionable outbreak.
That's
There's a militia there, but
Hertfordshire or
really they were
whatever.
doing it already.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like she's already kind of like one of the king's soldiers herself,
Mhm.
being a highly trained warrior. And they kind of, I like how strong and how much ability they give her later on. I think it's cool.
Yes. So the other scene was with Lady Catherine when this part I loved like wholeheartedly, because
Yes.
I hate Lady Catherine, and because she is severely like judgmental and thinks she is better than everybody else and that she does no wrong. Her poop don't stink. Bitch, you do stink. Everything about you stinks. Like, I don't like her at all. I thought she was terrible. But in this, she's like, it's the same conversation she has in the original about, Mr. Darcy is, we have an agreement that even from his infancy that he was going to marry my
Yeah.
daughter, his
Sounds like
cousin.
Darcy is unaware of said agreement.
Yeah, he is. And if he does know about it, he is not interested. He doesn't want to
No.
marry his cousin. And
He,
it talks about how she's sick all the time and she doesn't
yeah.
even know how to she
If
doesn't
not
even
for her
eat.
constitution, she'd be a great warrior. No,
Yeah.
girl, get out of
So he or she comes to she's like, I see that you have this dojo out there. I'm like, why don't you take me and show me around, blah blah blah. And she goes out there with her and she's like, you tell me right now that you all are not engaged and I'll leave, or like that you're
here. Yeah.
not gonna,
Yeah, you have no intention. I
there's
like how Lizzie did that too, how she dances around it like, I can't tell you that. I
yeah.
don't know that. Yeah, it's good.
So she's like, well, fine. Now I have to. I'm gonna beat you up. I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna behead you because
Yeah.
you've done screwed up now. So I like that. Like at first, she has like Lady Catherine has an upper hand because she's very confident in herself. because she trained in Japan, whereas
Yeah.
Elizabeth didn't. She did it in China. But
Which she
there's
comments on all the time.
Yes. What the part that I loved though about that scene was that Lady Catherine is judging her harshly about, oh well, you thought that you were gonna best me, but you didn't. Now you're hiding because you're afraid. And Elizabeth's like, I am not afraid. She said, I was taught to know who I'm up against.
Yeah, not to underestimate my
Yeah.
opponents.
Do not underestimate your opponent. So she's up in the rafters and she jumps
Yeah.
down and she wins, man. I was so
Yeah.
pumped. I was like, yes, which I
I
figured would
do
happen, but
I like this dynamic for Lady Catherine because in the original story, she has an air of superiority for
mhm.
no reason.
Yeah.
She's just an uppity bee
Yeah.
in the original book. In this one, though, they gave her that backstory of being the greatest warrior in the king's army. So she has this
Yeah.
arrogance that has been earned.
Mhm.
And I feel like that gives her way more dynamic of a character. It makes her more, there's more depth there. Because originally, like, you're just like, ew, I'm so awesome because I'm rich. She's really an uppity
Yeah.
bee in the original story and she sucks. And you're right. And now you get it because she's never been bested. So she has this air of superiority because she's earned it.
Yeah, now
And she
she's
thinks her training's the best because
yeah.
she's yet to be bested in her life. I have a funny, it's so funny to me because in the movie, she's played by
Oh, I know. I
the
love
girl
that.
from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I love her.
Crap, what's her name?
I can't remember her name.
And it's awesome. She does a great job. But I don't picture her fighting when I was listening to the book. I was picturing the lady from it's Lena Headley, and she does a great job. But the lady that plays her in the
There
Pride and Prejudice thing is
Judy
who is it?
Dench.
She's from Jay's on. Yeah, Dame Judi Dench. In my brain, when I was listening to that scene in the book, it was Dame Judi Dench fighting her in that scene. So I wasn't picturing
Well,
Lena Headey. I was picturing an old like Dame Judi
she
Dench
is
busting out
old
a
though,
katana.
which is funny to me because that they chose so different for that movie because in there's artwork in the book, like sketches of like certain scenes, and that scene is in
Yeah.
there, and it's an old lady.
Yeah, well, she's definitely talked about as being older. The
Yeah.
movie, they cast some different people that weren't right, like Mr. Collins is not fat and things like that.
Yeah.
It was just a funny mental image of Dame Judi Dench with a katana flying around the room fighting.
It's great.
But it was cool. I think it really made her character have a lot more depth because her
Yeah.
arrogance is earned. And then even though she's still mad, like you could tell at the end, I like the little tiny thing, like in the earlier time when they first meet and she puts her ninjas up against Lizzie and Lizzie kills them.
Yeah. Oh my
Like
gosh, that
three
was
of
a
them.
gruesome scene. I was like, oh
Yeah.
man.
And she eats its heart and stuff. And she's like, yeah. And like
She
it
takes
was
his
all shown
insides and
because
like wraps his
yeah.
intestines around and chokes him. I was like,
Chokes him to
dang.
death with it. Well, because they talk about so much. Not only is there, I have more wealth than you, but
Yeah.
my wealth has bought me better training than you, and you're beneath me. And it's all Lizzie overcoming that gap. Like what I know in my personal physical prowess is better than anything you can throw at me. And it adds to her own kind of self-assuredness that she has in this story. I really liked it.
Yeah.
She's a good, strong. I think this makes her. She was already a good, strong female character. I think this makes her stronger than in the original.
Yeah, and I like that she doesn't kill Lady Catherine, and she gives the reason why she doesn't. She's like, I don't want him to hate me, and so I'm
Yeah,
gonna let you leave, and you're gonna just leave my property, or this might
yeah,
end differently.
yeah.
And
Or I'm
Lady
gonna be
Catherine's
here
not
too.
gonna be like, okay, I'm staying. No. She's like, okay, I'll leave. She leaves with her pride completely shattered because
Yes.
Elizabeth won. She's like
Well, that's a. Go ahead. Sorry.
she unarmed her and she's about
Yeah.
to cut her head off and she's like, look, I have the upper hand now. So but I said she's like, well, make it quick. And she's like, oh, I'm not gonna do that because I don't want him to hate me. So I'm gonna let you go.
And that was what was. Yeah, I love that part because when he tells her that my aunt told me what happened, it showed that she wasn't so arrogant
Yeah.
to downplay what happened to her. That she took that loss as like she bested me, not that she used Chinese trickery to beat me. She bested me, and because
Yeah.
he relates that to her. My aunt told me what happened and about your fight. So I think that's kind of interesting. Because he says that's what gave me hope because apparently she told him exactly what happened. Like she had her pinned to the wall, was going to kill her, and not only did she got free, she killed two ninjas and
Yeah.
then fought her in one with a hand with a hole in it.
Yeah, no.
which was just cool.
I know. Oh, I
It
forgot
was
about
cool.
that because that's cool because the illustration in it, there's like a page and it shows like Lady Catherine had Elizabeth on the floor and like her hand is like on it with a dagger through it. It was pretty cool. Like I like the little
Yeah.
art pieces in it. It was cute, but the cute hitch. But anyways, I think that was a good segue into the proposal between Darcy and Elizabeth and like Bingley and Jane. I felt like Jane and Bingley were more of a backdrop in this one, and Elizabeth and Darcy became even more so a prominent like love story because I feel like
Yeah.
in the old one or the original it was a lot about Jane and Bingley and it was a little bit but not as much. I feel like he pushed the story with Darcy and Elizabeth a little bit better, which I appreciated.
Because they're the only two people care about.
Yeah, and they're
You
supposed
know,
to be
when you
so.
see things quoted from this movie, it's things that Lizzie and Darcy say. No one ever quotes anything Bingley says.
No, well,
He's
because
a secondary character. He doesn't even matter.
yeah, and he's kind of lame like Jane. Jane's
Yeah.
kind of lame. I do like Jane, but she's lame.
I don't know. Like I do wish there'd have been more because Lizzie speaks to her reverence for her sister
Yeah.
as like a warrior and stuff, but you never get to see it.
No, you don't.
Which I like in the movie version. I
You
think they
do.
do it a little bit better when the dad says like 5 points of death, and the sisters all go into this rad formation and just spread out and kill everything there,
Mhm.
which says that they are a cohesive unit. Even though Lydia's the worst, they should have pushed her to a zombie. But they kind of do it, and it's kind of cool. And I really like it. Like as I give the original its merit because I know it's how
Yeah.
important it is to literature. I know how important it is to so many people in the world. But as a dude, this version is way better.
Well, yeah.
You know
I
what I
mean,
mean?
I
It's
would
more
agree with that.
exciting. I think the combat adds a layer. Well, and it's not just the mindless violence. It legitimately adds a layer as to why they love each other.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Because he says he fell in love with her the first time he saw her wield a dagger. Like the
Yeah.
moment he saw her, and she says because of his junk, which I think is hilarious.
I know.
The first time she saw those most English parts, but
I love the English part.
which is so funny.
I love it so much. Jane was
The
like, oh,
moment,
okay.
yeah, she's like, oh. And they comment on it earlier, like whenever he saves her and her aunt and uncle, they mention his most English part. So Darcy
Uh-huh.
must have had it going on. He must have been wearing some tight riding pants or something. But I like that he says, the moment I saw her wield a dagger, I knew that I loved her.
Yeah.
So he didn't like her at first until she whips out that little ankle dagger and is killing people with a dagger, not even
Mhm.
using a sword. So he's seeing her prowess. Like he has a reverence for her that is not just based in her beauty, but then her physicality and her presence and her like
Her
just
mind.
ability in her mind, which I think makes it better because in the first one, it's a lot of it based on looks and he gets to know her a little bit, but she's so obstinate. He doesn't get that because, like, and he builds it later on. But this one is like, I loved you the moment I saw her pull that out. Like, he got to see her and her being a tactician, her being a warrior,
Yeah.
her honor, her abilities. And he loves her for that, which I think is kind of awesome and a little bit poetic, really, to the story. And it's just cool that there's zombies and ninjas in it.
Yeah, I thought the end where they're walking with each other and the dad has that little cauliflower garden thing and then like all those
Yeah.
little dimensionals are in there and they kind of grin at each other and they're like, we get to fight together today.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they and it was really that was a fun little addition. And what's funny too is there's another illustration in it that has that picture of them looking at each other smiling when there's
Yeah.
like zombies eating on those cauliflower and they're like, we're just gonna kill these together. So
Yeah, we're gonna do this together because
yeah.
it's cool because he's a warrior, and Darcy values that, which I think is weird that he's friends with Bingley, who's not a
I
warrior and
know.
kind
He's
of
kinda lame,
worthless.
ain't he?
He's kind of worthless. So like, it's almost like Darcy that when you first meet him, everyone in the party he's with is useless.
Yeah, he's the only one that's not.
Yeah, because he talks about his regard for like people. Darcy's combat ability is well known
Mhm.
as he is one of the greatest combatants, much like his aunt. I'm sure he's been afforded the best training
Oh, yeah,
ever.
'cause he has the money.
Yeah, because you have the money, which I think is interesting. I just like that layer, man. I really think like it could have been done in a way that added nothing but little bits of gore to the book, and it would have still been good to have these scenes, but it wouldn't have added. I think he did a good job of literally adding an additional layer to every single character that Jane Austen created,
Yeah, he did a good job.
and they're all better for it.
And like I said, there's those little parts of intimacy in the end where they're really talking to each other and having conversations. And
Yeah.
like him walking in from talking to her dad to get permission to marry her, and he like slips in like next to her, and he's just like kind of whispers to her, you can go see your dad now. Like that's not something that Darcy would have done in the original, because that would have been kind of too forward because of the
Yeah.
time period. But he added little elements of it's okay to be intimate with the other person, even if it's just like being close and having a conversation. Like I liked those pieces too.
Yeah, it's my favorite because, like you said, when she wrote it, there wasn't a lot she could have done
No.
in regards to that. But I think throwing in this element of this zombie outbreak, a lot of that, not all of it, of course, because you see it in some of their interactions, but that classist rules and the
Yeah.
decorum is being replaced by warrior's honor kind of stuff, like the Bushido Code almost, and things like that is being
Mhm.
brought in because it's like we don't have a choice. So you're seeing while yes, this zombie outbreak has changed everything, it's also changed society to be more accepting of being more forward and less formal, even though
Yeah.
there's some of that
You have to
old
be.
world England still there. I thought it was really cool how they done it. I really liked it.
Yeah, I like the ending. I liked a lot better than the original because I got more of them together at the end, and like them talking about like their life after they got married, like with Bingley and Jane moving closer to Darcy and Elizabeth, and then Kitty actually coming to train with her sisters on the dojo that they created for them to work in, like to
Yeah.
train in, and so that they could have that time together. And then Darcy was like, I'm going to pay for you to go to Japan. So then Kitty gets to actually go to Japan and train at the end. And I thought that was really cool because now she'll be in higher society and even have a better life than Lydia, which I love so much.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't give you that about Kitty at the end. It's like them, and then Mary's just kind of there. So.
Yeah. Mary's like, whatever, bro.
So are you ready to review with
Yeah.
our new rubric? We have a rubric for the Judy Dreadfuls.
Yeah, I wonder, like, it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, the new rubric.
Rubric.
Well, both of them have new rubrics, but now we have one, like Jenny said, that's just for the novels that we
Mhm.
will apply to the books. And yeah, take us through it.
So I'll tell you what the categories are. So we have character development, plot development, imagery, and style and conventions. So style and conventions is more of like the writing and the language. Sentences are strong and expressive with varied structure, and then
Okay.
you have and then there's like no errors. So like there's gonna be some books that we get to that are not as well known that might have some errors in it. So that's
Yeah,
why it's
yeah.
there.
Well, not every book will be a retelling either. A lot of this stuff, like going forward, this is because it fit our theme this month, right? So going forward, you guys it'll be original works,
Yeah.
usually by authors, not an 85-15 split.
The other thing is with this one is it's not like he took complete credit for this book. So Jane Austen is listed.
Yeah, she listed first, right?
Yes, she's listed first because essentially it is her story. It's
That's
just
what I
he
was going to ask.
embellished.
Are we going to base this on
I
Jane Austen text or just what he added?
I think we should do both because it's both of the works combined because they're both listed.
Okay.
I don't want to just omit one of the authors because they both had hands in writing it.
Okay.
So character development. So if it's going to be a 25 or 20, it would clearly describe the character in detail, clearly develops characters over the course of the text, and then characters are well balanced and show growth or lack thereof to suit the needs of the piece. So, and then it just kind of goes further down into like, did you not do this? And then,
Okay.
So character development, I loved the addition of the information like you were just talking about with Darcy and Elizabeth. I thought that was
Yes.
stellar.
I know. I was about to say his is better.
I like the information about Wickham. I thought it was more detailed, and
Yes.
his descent was great in this one because in the
Yeah.
original he doesn't really get punished a whole lot because let's be real.
No.
He is going to be a hoe the rest of his entire life in the original, and Lydia's
Yeah.
going to have to suffer that. So,
Not only does he get a wife, he gets a higher commission Darcy paid for. He gets nothing he's earned.
yeah.
So you get a young wife from not necessarily an esteemed family, but who has two sisters who are married into money who have become esteemed as a family because one of them's
Yeah.
married to one of the richest people in the area. So yeah, he gets almost really he gets nothing bad happens to him in the first one. Like Darcy pays for him to be an officer
Yeah, exactly.
in accordance to agree to marry him when really you should have just killed him. You killed them both. killed them both.
Yeah, just no one would care if they were gone. But I
No, sir.
liked the character developments in this one a whole lot more.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Jane did what she could based on the time period. Because I felt like if she
Yeah.
was too forward, the piece would not have done so well.
I can
So,
see that,
but
but I would
it's
give
also
this
what
one
she knows.
a higher character points than I would just Pride and Prejudice by itself.
Oh well, yeah. Well, I mean, we're trying to do both. So,
Yeah, yeah.
I would honestly give the character development in this one a 25, but that's just me.
You have a range here. It says 25 to 20. So does that mean anywhere in there?
Yeah.
Because I would be thinking more like 22-ish, not a full 25. Because I do think some of the characters. The one thing I think those books suffers from, and it's the same with Pride and Prejudice, is that there's too many characters.
That's a lot of books, though.
I know, and that's why it's hard to read some of the older stuff. Like now, where you get well, a lot of books will have one main character, and then you have extra characters who they're being fleshed out is not a big deal. But there's so many characters that are so vital to the progression of this story that it's a lot to keep up with. And I really think somewhere 22, 23, they did a really good job because where some of them were way much better, some of them were kind of left to the wayside. They're just thrown in.
Like who?
Like the other aunt, Miss Phillips.
Yeah, that was only to kind of show how big of a gossip the mom was.
Well, yeah, but at the time, that's their family. They would have been there. Like the one aunt is regarded like the Fosters, no Gardeners. Sorry, the Gardeners are thrown in like they're there all the time. Oh, my favorite aunts, and then all of a sudden at the third act of the book, oh, there's another aunt who lives in Meryton who's closer than the Gardeners are that you never hear is never there. And really, in the original novel, like there's someone else wrote this book about what happens after. Well, I think Kitty ends up marrying one of her uncle's law clerks or something. So there's like a whole connection to the other family, but they bring them in for no reason. I mean, you could have never had her in there and just said, a lady in town told me. You know what I'm saying? Like earlier on, they talk about the housemaid at Netherfield. You could have just said their mom saw them, not, oh, your other aunt who we just now found out we had. It was just silly. And I thought, so I'm thinking
I
like
guess
22,
it doesn't
23.
bother me as much with some of the minor
Yeah.
characters because that's why they're minor. That's why they're there. They're just serving one particular purpose.
It's weird.
And that's done.
But I will say, I mean, I can get it. Like I said, it was really good. It's the well balanced part that you wrote here is why I was kind of taking a few points off because they're not really well balanced. Some are not. They're definitely more developed, which I think is great. They build up. I think Darcy gets a way better development in this story than he does in the original. And so does Lizzie. Like I said, she has a whole nother layer of her character that is just makes her powerful and a much better icon than what she was originally. I think. I wish people didn't hate this book so much because of the comparison.
Well, that's the thing is people don't want something like this tainted with violence because that's really not what she intended it to be. But at the same time, it's a fun retelling. It's not like I love the original, and I said that at the very beginning. I liked this one. I didn't love it. I loved the original, and I will always stick to that. But I also liked this one, and I appreciated all the stuff that he added to it. I thought that was fun. I liked the intimacy of Darcy and Elizabeth more so in this one than in the original. But essentially, I did love the original when I first read it. It was, but
I think this is a book just like the remake movies that Ed, you called it something else and changed their names. Everyone loved it. There would be no
absolutely.
negative.
Like people don't want
It
things to
wasn't
be
Mr.
retold or
Darcy.
redone.
Yeah, if it wasn't, Mr. Well, they're super prominent icons. Mr. Darcy is an icon. I mean, you see his quotes on coffee mugs and pictures and like shirts and pillows and shit. You know what I mean? So, the whole "I ardently love and adore you" is freaking everywhere. Every girl gets that written to them in a love letter one time in their life. It's ridiculous.
I have not. So
you should go holler at your husband. Because Aaron has, I'll tell you that.
You know what? He said
smooth.
many nice things to me without having to quote books. So
I'm quoting out Mr. Darcy on the reg.
No, well, you keep doing that because that's what you need to do. Okay.
No, I don't.
All right, so plot development. I'm just gonna read like the distinguished one because I don't feel the need to read all through those. But themes are well developed and clear to the reader. Pacing of the story is timed well and doesn't feel rushed. This one I would score lower, and the only reason why is because I don't think the pacing is right. So like the original, it was slow, and and always was slow because that's just how she wrote.
Yeah.
But this one, it felt like he started slow and then he went balls to the wall at the end and was
Yeah.
like, let's do all the action at the end. I got bored halfway through because I was like, where are the zombies? Where's the fighting? And it didn't really hit a turning point till Elizabeth went to the Collins estate. And then she fought the ninjas, and then, she fought
No,
Darcy, and
she
then
fights early on though. Like they're
it's
at a
not.
party, they fight zombies early, and then she fights them with
Yeah, but
Darcy.
it's not as, it
Yeah,
was a
it's
lot
spread
slower
out
in the
more.
beginning.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not, it wasn't like, if it had been action packed the entire time, then I might score this a little higher.
Okay.
I thought the themes were well developed though, so I would probably fall at either like between a 19 and a 20 on this one.
I go to 19. I agree. I think the pacing it jumps around a lot because I do think
Yes.
there is some violence at the beginning that's good, and every time they walk to Meriton, they're fighting something,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of cool. But yeah, I can see that maybe 19.
Okay, so the next one would be imagery. So, author creates well thought out and descriptive scenes, setting, and actions. I thought this was well done. The imagery's always been well done to me, but I'm not gonna say it's a 25. I don't think it's a 25, but I think like the fight scenes were very descriptive.
Yeah, especially in the decapitations or like the disembowelment of the ninjas.
Yeah, so I would probably fall between a 15 and a 19 on this one.
So I was thinking maybe like a 17.
Yeah, let's do that. A lot of
Yeah,
uneven
because I feel
numbers.
like because that one it says the pacing of the story is timed well and doesn't feel rushed most of the time, and the themes are well developed and clear to the reader most of the time. And I would agree with that statement. It is most of the time, but there are some things that are. Oh, sorry, we're on imagery, aren't we?
Yes, we're on imagery.
My bad. Arthur creates well thought out descriptive scenes, setting, and actions most of the time. Because it is like there are some really good descriptive scenes, and there's some you're like, what is going on? Why is it like that? What happened? How we
Yeah,
get here?
I thought it was really, they just oh my gosh. They described Darcy's home really well.
Yeah.
And the dojo was described pretty well, but it didn't really describe certain homes that were
Like
supposed to
like
be.
like their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
wasn't
You
really, it was kind of described a little bit by Lady Catherine as she was going through and opening doors before she went to the dojo, but that was like very rushed though. It wasn't
yeah. It is
like you're
only it was almost the very end.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I would say that it was most of the time. So we said, what did we say, 17 on that one?
Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
All right, so style and conventions. Writing and language is smooth, skillful, and coherent. Sentences are strong and expressive with varied structure, and there's no conventional errors present. To me, this one scores fairly high. I thought the only reason why is because by him adding in what he did a very phenomenal job keeping
Yes.
close to her original work.
I
And
can
that
agree
is
with that.
hard to do. So
I
he had
think I
to be,
read somewhere it's 85% her and 15% him.
but you can't tell. Like
Yeah,
you
no.
know which one is him because of like the differences. But if you had taken both their names off of this, you would thought it was just one author. Because I
Yeah,
thought he did a good job at sounding as close to her writing as possible.
I agree.
And that to me is very skillful. So that's hard
I
to do
agree.
to write
I
like
couldn't
that.
do it.
No,
Yeah,
I don't even know if I could either.
especially being from Alive now, just the pacing, the dialect, and how they spoke
Yes.
is alien to us
Hmm.
at this point.
So
Especially
he
as an
had
American, he's not even British. So as an
exactly. He
American
had to be
person,
very well versed in how
yeah,
to write in that way. So he
I
had to
agree.
do a little bit of I don't know. I don't know what he would have had done to write this because he did. I just think he did a really good job.
I agree.
So
So what are you thinking?
it scores pretty high on my book.
What do you think?
I think it's a 25.
You think it's a 25?
Yeah, I mean, there's no errors. The sentences are strong. It has expressive. It was very expressive with varied structure. There's varied structure in there, and then the language is very smooth, skillful, and coherent. It doesn't. There's no lack in any of those things. Like the conventions are all there. And
Yeah, and I think he even does a good job of describing, like with the unmentionables and calling it the plague and using the
yeah,
religious context they would have had at the time and not just being like, ooh, zombies. I
yeah.
do think the ninjas part was kind of silly. Like, I like it, but ooh, my ninjas. I'm like, what?
I mean,
Okay. But it does fit to what our idea of that period Japan was like the feudal nature. So, yeah, I'm cool with that.
and there's also a geisha in waiting. Did you see that the part at the
Yeah,
end?
not till the very end.
I was
Yeah,
like,
it's weird.
she has her own personal geisha. Shut up. I actually
This is
mentioned that in
very
my
Japanese. I'll tell you the one thing that bothers me, it doesn't bother me about this book, but I thought was weird, is that other than they're mentioning their master, there's no Japanese people in this story. Like even the ninjas, I don't think are Japanese. I think they're like trained British people.
Well, I don't think it ever explains that fully,
No.
but I think you're thinking of the movie because I don't really know.
I don't remember ninjas even being in the movie for real. I
They
haven't
weren't
watched it in a really long
ninjas;
time.
they're more like bodyguards. But
Yeah. But she
that
calls
was
them her ninjas,
yeah.
which I thought was a little over the top a little bit. Because ninjas are kind of a whatever. But it was cool. Yeah, whatever. I can go with you. I think some people are gonna be really mad at the scores we gave this book.
Well, they
Because
can get over it.
it is not a well liked book.
Well, I mean, you can't. I mean, I don't understand why people can't read or watch two things that are very similar and give them credit for what they are. I don't understand that. Like, I loved the original, and I still liked this one enough. I mean, it only scored an 84. It's still a B. I had to add it up on my phone because I don't do good at math. I'm not a math person. It scored an 84. I think that's pretty good. It's a B.
Yeah, no, I mean I agree. I think it's good. I just like again, it's a good story. I think the adding of it made it. I really think they did a good job just overall
Mm-hmm.
of building the characters up and giving them a layer. I give him all the props for how he did it with adding a layer to it, adding a just a whole nother sense of these characters, which I thought was important and I liked.
Well, he took their
Um,
original form and he made them better because of the fact that they had to be highly trained in fighting because of the plague that they were under. So
yeah.
it was necessary to move them forward the way that he did. So he did a really good job. I appreciated it. It did take me a little bit to get through it only because I had some hiccups along the way, but other than that, I did enjoy the book. It's
Yeah,
hard
I
not to
loved it.
enjoy it.
I was trying to find this quote I found that it was really funny. It's basically the New Yorker's Macy Halford called the book's estimated blend of 85% Austen's words and 15% Graham Smith's 100% terrible.
I don't agree with that because if it's 80, what did you say? 85%
85.
Jane Austen. So
Pride
you're
and Prejudice
saying
is
that Jane
terrible.
Austen's book is no good.
Yeah,
So that really
essentially.
was kind of a stupid comment.
People just hate on it because it's what it was.
So really you
You look
should
at
just say 15% of it was no good.
yeah, which I think is wrong.
I
Like I
I
said,
don't
I think
agree
it
with it either. I think it was really well done and if people hate it then they hate it, but I didn't.
well, I mean, let's be honest. Pride and Prejudice is not an easy read. It's a
No.
large book. If you don't read a lot or know much of the time, you don't get a lot of the subtext
No.
or even the context of the book. So I think adding this new layer gives it, not only does it introduce, with it being that much her, it introduces younger people who would never pick up Pride and Prejudice. It will introduce them to the words and work of Jane Austen, which I think is cool
Mhm.
and important. I definitely think she is a very important author.
Well, yeah, because her stories are continuously being remade into something like
Oh, shit, I didn't know Clueless was based on Emma. So it's
yeah.
like, well, it's just like people don't read Shakespeare. I don't like that. Do you like movies? Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, do
most
you
things
like 10
are
Things I
inspired
Hate
by.
About You? Because that's the
Yeah,
Taming of the Shrew. So,
yeah. And
whatever.
there's so many things that are just based on or taken from the story of an author, right?
Yeah.
So many ideas. Like I said, I'm now that I think about it, I'm fully confident Wickham is 100% the basis of that sleazy, money hungry guy you see in all the 80s and 90s movies trope. Like 100%. They're all
Yeah.
Wickhams.
Oh, he's a
You know what I mean?
Wickham.
So you're a Wickham. That's my new thing. That dude's a Wickham. But yeah, so it's cool. I think it introduces a whole new layer of or not layer, but whole new I guess world, I guess, of people to the work of Jane Austen because it is a lot of her work. He just kind of he doesn't even modernize it. Like we just say, he does a good job of sticking true to the period and how which it was written, but he makes
Yeah,
it
and it
more
shows that he
interesting.
appreciated her enough to not veer from the language that she originally spoke in. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I think that that should be, considered when you're reading it. Like he did a good job at keeping as close to her way of writing as possible, and I think that was an appreciation on his part. So
Yeah, I
uh
agree. And like I said, like I consider myself well read. I like to read. But as a dude that likes horror, I would read this book even not being well read and still be able to like it. You know what I mean? Like I read
yeah.
a lot, or I did read a lot. Teachers don't read a lot anymore, guys. It's horrible. We got
Oh yeah,
great
it's because we're
papers and
so
we read
tired. By the time we go to
nonsense.
read, we fall asleep. So there's that.
Our eyes are set. Our eyes revolt and put us to bed. But
Nope, sleep.
no, why are you doing this? Go to sleep. We don't read for fun anymore. But in my youth and my formative years, I've thoroughly enjoyed reading, and I consider myself at the time a voracious reader. So for me, it was easy to read the book originally because I read, but like as a person who doesn't necessarily read, but maybe you really like horror or you really like the work of Clive Barker or you like those kind of stories, this has that, right? It has those things that would capture a younger guy necessarily, whereas the romance and all that was for a younger woman. Not that men can't like romance, but typically that's who reads that. I mean, if we're honest, and not to genderize it, but you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing is usually viewed as a book for women. This makes it a book for everybody because now it has that romance. It has those like women out trying to find their love, and it has that love story, but it also has zombies and ninjas and sword fighting. So it's like, okay, cool. You know what I mean? Like it
Well,
makes it a book for everyone.
it also adds the fact that women can be warriors. And I
Yes.
think that should be hailed as something more important because we're not all damsels in distress. And I think it's important for little girls and younger women to see themselves reflected as warriors instead of somebody who's just, needs rescuing. I get annoyed with that. So we're not
100%.
always the ones that need rescuing. So there's
I love it. And I think that with that, we'll end with that because that was great. I think that is going to be a quote I put on the Instagrams. So I like it.
that.
Because you're right, 100%. And I was going to say that it essentially it makes Lizzie a stronger female influential character,
Yeah.
far more than she did in the original story.
Mhm.
I think because now she is like a strong, powerful woman who knows what she wants. She knows how to get it, and she will not be told otherwise. She's a little stubborn, but that's fine. She's headstrong. You know what I mean? And I like it.
Yeah. All right.
All right, man. We'll tell them where to find us, Jenny.
Okay. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Horror in the Halls. You can also follow Jenny_Dreadfuls on Instagram. You can email us at horrorinthehalls@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah, guys. So there it is. Month 1 of our new format
We hope you
is
like
come
it.
to a wrap. We hope you like it. I hope you followed along in our little Horror in the Halls book club and read with us. And yeah, so that's the bell, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.